We've seen a lot of this coming in the women's uniforms from Nike, where they've paid homage back to a wonderful design in 2002.
Didn't you design that?
Oh, there you go. For me personally, they've kind of hit the post with that. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we've got a really special one. We are going to be talking about the Women's World Cup, which is coming up very soon to TVs all around the world, and it is going to be performed in Australia, Rob. So we've got an array of kits to go through, but I thought before we got into this, I had a question for you. Have you ever designed football kits for a Women's World Cup before?
Not for a World Cup. I have designed women's football kits before.
And how do they differ to some of the men's football kits you've done in the past?
Yeah, I mean, if I think of my time at Puma and at Umbro, it was the Puma kits we tended to do a different design, and it was more fitted towards a female figure. Okay. Although it was only for certain teams, it certainly wasn't as prevalent as it is now. I mean, this is nearly 20 years ago we were doing that. Mm-hmm. And then with Umbro, again, it was for some of the bigger teams like England, where with the Tailored by Umbro collection, for example, which was done for men was by chest sizes, by women it was also dress sizes. So rather than just small, medium, large, or as some brands would have done at the time, take a men's medium and say it's an extra large for women, we actually fitted them specifically as 8, 10, 12, mm-hmm. You know, the dress sizes. So yeah, it would have been kind of very early rudimentary approach compared to how people are approaching it and brands are approaching it now, for sure. Yeah,
because we've just seen, you know, through some of the launches of Nike and Adidas, not only are we seeing kits, we're also seeing football boots as well, which yep. I've got to say the Nike one, if you haven't seen it, just check it out here. They've done a tremendous job. The Adidas boots look great as well, and I believe there's a lot of other companies now looking into it.
Yeah.
So if you were designing stuff for Australia, for example, how would you have gone about it? What would have been your first kind of research exercise, if you like?
First research exercise would have been to blag an all expenses paid trip to Australia. Spend a bit of time down there, soak up the weather, visit Ramsay Street, get a bit of a flavour for the place, but then I'd want to have some conversations with local female footballers and just get an understanding of what it's like playing in the different regions of Australia, because it's a big country at this particular time of year. Mm-hmm. So ideally I would have wanted to have been down there in the July of the time that I was starting to work on it, and yeah, to really have those conversations. So partly with, you know, members of the Australian women's team, depending on, you know, if they were athletes of whichever brand I was working for, but also with amateurs as well, and just get a real flavour for what is it about the environment, the climate that could be different down there. Is the ground particularly hard, which might lead to us needing more additional padding in the socks, or, you know, what are the things that we would need to take into account? Obviously then I'd want to speak with key athletes of the different teams that I was designing for, partly to get a understanding of what are the particular unique challenges that they're facing, if any, as a woman playing football compared to, you know, somebody with a man's body, and then I think talking to the fans and getting a real understanding of each nation and how I could best represent them on field. So once we'd gone beyond performance, what does it then look like once they're lined up and it's on the pitch and on the terraces?
Okay, really interesting. So at what point do you think you would start talking to the federations and what their needs were?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We'd normally have a function in the business called a product line manager, and they would work with marketing to get some of those insights around, are there specific needs that they're looking for. But typically we would come up with a creative concept for, here's how we're going to approach the particular tournament. So certainly in Adidas's case this time around, they appear to have been really inspired by nature in each of the different countries that they've designed for. So for them, that would have been put together as, here's the result of all the research, here's the performance criteria, here's the overall ethos of how we're going to approach it, and here's how that relates to your federation. Obviously, then there'd be particular conversations once you come to present it, which would normally be about 18 months out from the tournament. So I would have expected the designers from these brands to have been sat with federations in probably December or January of 2021 to be presenting the designs and potentially even prototypes at that stage as well.
Awesome. So that gives me a really good insight as to how certainly Rob would approach it. So let's get into the kits then, Rob. So what we have got here, this is a bit of a disclaimer. So we've got a select few Nike kits and a few Adidas kits. There definitely are some other companies out there. We know Hummel's out there. We know Umbro's out there. We know Castor's out there. We've got Grand Sports, which is out there as well. So there's lots of different manufacturers there who will have different points of view on it all. But we felt that we'll just pick a couple of the big brands out. And certainly the two that I would say we've waxed lyrical about over the last few seasons, if you like. So why don't you kick off? Pick out one or two of your faves, if you like. And we'll get stuck into the design side of it all.
So for the Adidas ones, I really like the approach they've taken with the graphics, just like I did for the Men's World Cup.
And this is replica, right?
Yeah. So we've got the replica shirts of Spain, Germany, and Colombia in front of us, unless there's any other nations hiding around me in this amazing hall.
Yeah. And it's fair to say, if you watch any of our previous World Cup videos that we showed a lot of the men's products, what you would find on the promo versions is the fabrication is definitely different. So we spoke passionately about the kind of 3 stripe detail on the shoulders, which you'll see on the replica one. They don't have that on this. But if you see the promo version, you'll see all of that, and all the badges and stuff are heat transfers as opposed to embroideries and stuff. But so definitely worth checking out the authentic players versions as well. But for today's episode, we're going to concentrate on...
I mean, that's an if you can get your hands on them. Certainly looking at some of the websites at the moment, a bit tricky to find the authentics from Adidas, and then some of the Nike teams, it's a little bit easier than others. In terms of these as replica shirts, though, I mean, the fabric doesn't feel great. It feels quite heavy, and it's been printed on, so it's naturally going to have a little bit more of that kind of compressed, flat feel to it. But obviously, I think one of the key learnings around...
It is aero ready, sorry, though.
Well, that's the main thing. But yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned around women's football over the last few years is that some of the materials do have to be different, because there's potentially bras can show through, and same with the shorts as well. So as a Villa fan, the Villa women's team wore either claret or sky blue home shorts last season, rather than the men's team wears white shorts. So part of that is visibility, part of it is period awareness as well. Which, things that are unique to the women's game, but it's really important to have that. So I mean, it's not a bad fabric. I don't love it. I think the print and the colourways are what win it for me across Spain, Germany, and Colombia. So in the Spanish example here, it's inspired by the coral reefs that are most common in Southern Europe and also in Australasia, which is handy because that's where the tournament is. So really highlighting the importance of those coral reefs in the ecosystem of our planet. The Colombia one, beautiful colours again. I mean, it's interesting that the colours feel Colombian, but then they also relate back to the graphic. So the graphic is inspired by a river in Colombia which has beautiful different coloured plants and life forms growing in it. So anybody that was to kind of look a bit deeper into that would see that this is a pretty good reflection of how that river looks. I'm not going to try and say it because it's got a very Spanish name, but it's in the description if you want to take a look at it. And then the German one, and having lived in Germany for quite a while, it does feel like a good representation. So this is inspired by the canopy of German forests, which are obviously heavily pine tree populated. And so if you were to walk in a German forest and look up above your head, this is fairly consistent with what you'd see. I think what's quite interesting and nice is just the different approaches that they've taken with the graphics. So obviously here it's on the front and the back on both of these, albeit it's a little bit different on the front and the back. The Spanish one isn't covering the entire front, it's more of a placement print. So I think all in all they're great looking shirts. I'm just not a massive fan of the material, but you know, I think it feels soft and it would be comfortable to wear. I wouldn't want to try and work out in it, but it is a replica shirt and not a...
With regards to the Adidas kits, I mean, I agree. I think visually they look really strong. I'm not overly enamoured with the fabric, but I don't mind it. I certainly like the fabric differentiation you've got between the underarm panels and the main body panels. I quite like the silhouette. It's very reminiscent of the men's, but there isn't a huge variety in it. But that's why they've heavily relied on the graphics, really. But yeah, all in all, I don't mind the Adidas ones. Do you want to learn from two veterans who've designed football kits for Brazil, Italy, Man United, Barcelona, you name it? If you want to learn from us, sign up today for our courses, Spark Design Academy. Come on, get signed up and get in front of those big brands right now. So, shall I get into some of the others? I'm going to pick up a few of the Nike kits. First one I'd probably start with was the Brazil kit. Again, I believe this is the replica jersey.
Sure is.
And yeah, it's pretty straight up and down. I quite like they've got like an embossed detail. Is it embossed? No, I would actually say that's probably knitted in actually. So that's a jacquard that's on the front of that, which looks like it's, you know, the kind of floral leaf that's synonymous with Brazil. Yeah, I think it's okay. It's a straight up and down Brazil uniform. I am questioning on some of it though why these paneling details are here, but I'll come back to that in a moment because I think it's more prevalent when you see it on another shirt. Which I'll start with that then, and I'll move quickly to the Dutch kit, which we've seen a lot of this coming in the women's uniforms from Nike, where they've paid homage back to a wonderful design in 2002 where they won the World Cup with Brazil.
Didn't you design that?
Oh, there you go. So they've done quite a nice little job of that, and I would imagine, and I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that's why the panels have been cut the way they have been. So it's actually again paying homage to the Cool Motion concept where it was mesh at the bottom. For me personally, I think they've kind of hit the post with that, because I think there really isn't any need to create that there.
There's mesh there, so they could have just carried.
They could have just carried it on. It's probably better from a lay plan perspective, and what I mean by that, a lay plan. So as you get all of your pattern pieces for your garments, you lay it on a piece of fabric essentially. Machine comes in and cuts all those panel pieces out. Now, if you're really clever about how you design your lay plan, you can get really low amounts of wastage. So there might have been an argument as to why they've done this. But my gut feeling would be, I still think they could have maybe took advantage of it and maybe just moved that into the mesh detail as well. So it would have been a little bit more of an obvious kind of back to it. Fabrication wise on the replicas, I'm not a massive fan. I definitely think it's better than the Adidas one, if I'm honest.
It's not dissimilar though.
But it's not a million miles away, no. And then some of the other things I've noticed, if I pick up the French, and I believe you've got an England kit there as well. So we've now got the authentic players version here. And we've got a replica there and a replica of the Dutch one. Now what I want to pull your attention to is what they've actually done with a lot of the badges is they've actually used Rob.
So it's called Nike Regrind, which is a program that they've been running for a number of years where they historically would reclaim the rubber from the soles of Nike shoes. So it would go into a grinding machine, get ground up, and they would do some amazing things with it, such as zip pullers or resurfacing all of the basketball courts.
And you'll have seen it. And you'll have seen it in a lot of the trainers that they've done. And the reason why I've kind of asked Rob to talk a little bit about that is because we're passionate about recycled product and how we get cradle to cradle. That's what we're ideally looking for.
What does that mean?
So cradle to cradle means you can basically take a garment and it can be recycled without pretty much doing anything to it.
Reused again.
It just reused and reused and reused. The challenge that you have is as soon as you put it into a football jersey, yes, this is fantastic, because what I would do is I would give Nike massive kudos in as much as this whole garment is 100% recycled.
Yeah, correct.
So all the fibres.
And that's the first time Nike have done that.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So I give them total kudos for that. Well done, guys. Great job. The next challenge would be, right, then, so how do we recycle this? So we can't just recycle this as it is.
Why not?
Well, because there's rubber on here, and then we've got polyester here, and so on and so forth. So the thing's got to be broken down. So all this has to be taken off if we want to recycle it. That all said, look, it's a journey, right? Everybody's on a journey when it comes to recycling product. And I've got to say Nike and Adidas are doing a fantastic job. So it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. But what I think is really quite nice is I quite like the way it's worked on certain badges.
Yeah.
I think the French badge, I've said this in the Men's World Cup, it's absolutely stunning. I love it. Where I'm not a big fan is when it comes into something that's predominantly white, because from a distance it actually looks dirty. But that's only my personal preference. But I think, again, visually, I actually quite like the Inkling kit. I quite like the French kit. I like the fact that it's that kind of off-white, which apparently is reminiscent of the white from the Wembley, the old Wembley Towers.
That's right.
Which I think is quite a nice little nod.
Yep.
But yeah, all in all, I think some of the Nike kits are really quite interesting. If you get the chance, please have a look at the US one. We don't have it with us, but I'm a massive fan of Jackson Pollock, and it kind of reminds us of that as well. It's got like a paint splatters detail on it. But yeah, I mean, the two French kits I think are really, really lovely.
Yeah, interesting that they've gone with a lighter blue for the home kit this time out, whereas historically, certainly with Nike, it's been more of a navy colourway. Prior to that, it was royal, so they've managed to push the French kit in another direction again, which is an incredible effort, you know, to try and work with a federation like France and have them change colours is usually nigh on impossible. So I think they've done a really nice job with it. I still think the graphic on the men's French away shirt was far stronger than what we've seen here, but the previous women's French shirt had a kind of a similar thing to that again, so I think if they'd gone down that route with this, it would have looked too similar to the last one.
Potentially. So we've not got all the kits, as we said, but we've got a good array of some Nikes and Addies. I would love to hear what you think of some of the Women's World Cup kits as they start coming out and start playing in them. We've really enjoyed reviewing a lot of these. Definitely a step in the right direction. It's great to see that the women's sport is now really getting the kudos that it needs, and we're really elevating that.
Definitely would love to know what your favourite is. Are there any that we weren't able to get hold of that you wish we had been able to get hold of and reviewed? If we are able to get any more in the future, in the coming weeks, you will be able to see us review those on our Patreon. So you'll find the link in the description there. Also, to learn more about the design process and to potentially begin your journey or continue your journey towards being a professional football kit designer, then visit sparkdesignacademy.com, where you can learn from the two of us how we approach designing kits and potentially do a project if you choose to, which would then, if it's a great project, we'll give you feedback on it and maybe even put that in front of one of the big brands. So great opportunity there. If we don't see you on Patreon or the Design Academy website, that would be a shame, but hopefully we will see you here next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until then, take care.
Cheers. Have you noticed how white my teeth are, by the way?
Oh yeah? You've been to Turkey?
Yeah, went to Turkey.
Turkish teeth.